I understand that Zichen, you are covering the Third Plenum in your newsletter, Pekingnology. Could you just briefly walk us through what did you cover?
Well, one of the things is the symposium held in Jinan, and there was also actually, for me, I think that's very meaningful, is there was a CPPCC meeting recently in Beijing, which, CPPCC in China means political advisors, official political advisors. They also held a meeting where the CPPCC put out, I think, dozens of recommendations from CPPCC members. So that's also something we should refer to if you really want to get a sense of what the Third Plenary Session could talk about, could address in the reforms. And also there was very recently an article in the Qiushi journal.
So you did like a Third Plenum series newsletters, right?
Oh.
Did Third Plenum pay you as a PR for this?
Well, definitely not. And but I think, our audience for this particular program, I think I think they are similar to the sort of subscribers to our newsletters, people who are very, very interested in China, especially its politics, and who probably have a stake in China, whether they invest in China or they study China or they are diplomats working with China or on China. So this is the sort of things we try to cover.
Yeah, I think lots of overseas think tanks, they also pay lots of attention to the articles, to your newsletters and the articles like issued by Qiushi or by Xinhua or by the People's Daily, right? I think Neil Thomas from the Asia Society, he has a Twitter thread analyzing the articles from Qiushi to predict the themes for the Third Plenum. I think in one tweet he said that, some sentence from Qiushi implicate that the U.S. exports, the sanctions, the tariffs are actually infecting China's technology. And so China is also trying to develop its own technology, push the innovation, and the term new quality productive forces is also very important, will be a key theme for the Third Plenum, in his opinion.
Indeed. Qiushi is always a very reliable and official source of information on Chinese politics.
And
you cover something.
The official, just put it plainly for our viewers, Qiushi translates to seek truth, and it is the top theoretical journal of the CPC, the Communist Party of China. So it comes out bi-monthly, so every 2 weeks. So Han Wenxiu, a executive deputy director in China's Central Office for Finance and Economics, he put out an article in the latest Qiushi and talking about the potential reforms. But let's be very specific. He was not saying that.
He didn't mention Third Plenum in his article, right?
Yes.
But he mentioned about further deepening the reform, which is the theme of the Third Plenum.
So in his article, he wrote about stuff that you guys thought were related to Third Plenum, even though he didn't specify a clear.
I would say I will be surprised if there is no connections between that, but I have no demonstrations. Yeah.
So what exactly did he write about?
Well, it was quite a long article, and what caught my eye is there were 6 areas of potential reform. And the first thing he mentioned was indeed what Jiang Jiang just referred to, is I think Neil Thomas laid out in his Twitter thread. It's about, basically China wants to have better science and technology, and especially their application in the new industries. But, of course, I don't think we could exclude the factor of U.S. export controls and the competition on China. But at the same time, this is a huge economy. And out of the path of China itself, China would want to have better technology in terms of manufacturing. And I remember when I was young, there was this was quite popular back then, is that China had to produce 800 million shirts to get, to earn enough money equivalent to perhaps one Boeing airplane. And,
right. Shirts, socks, matches. Yeah, I mean, the different versions of the same story, basically.
Yeah, but now, China is has already produced the C919, which is C919. It's a narrow-body jetliner. So it has become a sort of a competitor with Airbus and Boeing. So I think that's an example of the rise of science and technology and their role in the Chinese development. Huh?
Yeah, and Han Wenshu's article is also very long. Can you just simplify like the other 5 areas you mentioned?
Wow, you guys are really putting me on the spot here.
You are the ChatGPT 4.0 on China.
Well, I do think, for example, I think on the 5th point, Han Wenshu also talk about enhancing people's sense of gain, and I think he mentioned about potential
Money.
Supportive measures that would encourage Chinese men and women to give birth, because it is universally recognized that first of all, there is this fact that the new birth in China is falling, and secondly, people really want to have like more support from the government and from their employers to incentivize them to have more time and perhaps better compensation for having children. So that is also a thing that Han Wenshu talk about in his Qiushi article.
Yeah. Well, if I have to summarize, I think all the 6 areas, they are all like problem-oriented thinking patterns, right? The first thing you just mentioned about the technology is actually about like the development momentum issues, right?
And he also talked about, this is about attracting the talents, including from the overseas, which reminds me of a very recent podcast by Donald Trump. Did any one of you see that podcast?
I think I saw that where he said foreign graduates would be given a green card to the United States.
Yeah, on day 1, according to him. Huh?
Right.
But actually, China also have such type of policies, right? Not exactly the same, but in the first part that you just mentioned about in Han Wenshu's article, it says that China is trying to retain, to attract, and to create a favorable environment for non-Chinese talents. Actually, well, through my recent interactions with the Chinese academic circles, there are actually many Chinese professors, they are studied overseas. They even, doing their research in overseas countries, and they came back to China. They're talking about, create a favorable environment, like academic environment, not only for like Chinese experts, but also for non-Chinese experts to attract them to come here.
So can you give me a name? Which scientists are you talking about?
I cannot, but
it's off the record.
It's off the record. Yeah. But I mean, it's a hot issue that I think the Chinese people understand the importance that the success of the Chinese development path, we have to also learn from the others, right?
Yeah, I think that also speaks to the fact that opening up has always been understood as an inherent part of China's reforms, since the 1978, when China was having more and more students study abroad, and also China joined the WTO in 2001, and so from the Chinese perspective, like opening up, high-level opening up, is always part of the reform path, and I think that's also what Han Wenshu talked about in his articles.
Well, that's why 改革开放 or reform and opening are 2 words that always sort of go together in the Chinese language. When you think of one, you think of the other. The 2 are hand in hand.
But to be sure, we are still waiting for the details. And Han Wenshu laid out a series of potential areas, but perhaps due to the limitation of space, we should expect the details. For example, what specifically would be mentioned, would be rolled out in the reform package in the Third Plenary Session of the 20th Central Committee. And also, have you heard of Professor David Daokui, Li Daokui?
Yep.
I'm sure you do. Huh? He's a very renowned economist, and he just gave a luncheon talk
in CCG, right?
Yeah, at my current employer, the Center for China and Globalization, where he said he wasn't citing any internal sources, but he was confident that measures about supporting consumption, measures supporting birth would come out. And I also put it out in my newsletters, and I'm grateful Asia Society's China 5 newsletter.
Yesterday their newsletter also included that part. I saw that. Yeah.
So I mean, yes, of course, those are all great sources to be looked into. But I'm wondering, as we approach closer and closer to the Third Plenum, do we expect more sources to come out and maybe shed a little light on what's the direction of reforms that might undertake in this year's session?
Well, we don't know, but according to my observation, I mean, the overseas think tanks, they are really heavily on the documents, the articles from Qiushi and from like the mainstream Chinese media, right? And I think they have a rational expectation about this year's Third Plenum. And well, the new quality productive forces are the most frequent term they were using to describe the main theme of Third Plenum.
Karl also mentioned about it
Yeah.
in the Council on Foreign Relations blog post, right?
Yeah, the topic is about advancing manufacturing would be the theme of the Third Plenum, in his opinion, right? Because, because the high quality development, it has become the theme of the Chinese economic and social development so far, right? And I think the policymakers are trying to seize the opportunities provided by the technological revolution and the industrial transformation through new quality productive forces, right? I think you also have another newsletter explain this, right? It's about like the TTP, right? The total.
Yeah, I think that was Yang Liu, another very renowned professor and former dean of the School of National Development at Peking University. He was trying to, give his opinion on what new quality productive forces mean, and he was saying, and he was citing some very authoritative sources that the new quality productive forces, which is another mouthful, means China would work to increase the total factor productivity, which is another term in economics, and that's the direction that the new quality productive forces will send.
Or it seems that if you know where to look, the clues are actually everywhere. So for our viewers,
this is a place you should look, huh?
Well, aside from this, and aside from your newsletters, what are some good sources that you would recommend our viewers to follow if they want to pay closer attention to the Third Plenum?
I think 学习时报 can be another source. I don't remember.
I think that's the newspaper Study Times of the Central Party School. Yeah, I would also try to encourage you, if you really study China, to look into the CPPCC meeting that I mentioned a few moments ago, because first of all, the CPPCC is a official political advisory board, platform, and secondly, the CPPCC after the meeting has published those recommendations. So in my understanding, those are no longer just personal recommendations. They have received some sort of institutional endorsement. And thirdly, all those CPPCC members making those recommendations, they hold very significant roles in China, including former vice ministers and former ministers. So it's not that there are no clues, but you need to keep your eyes open.
And also know how to read between the lines, right?
Yeah, that's correct.